So after months of reading a ridiculous amount of books, I seem to have finally run out of my reading steam. I am not reading as much as I have been in recent months, and that's fine. I have really enjoyed what I've read, and I'm still proud of myself for continuing to read, even though I'm not really feeling like reading anymore for some reason. I'm getting distracted by other things, which is fine. I can take breaks. My obsessions tend to come in waves, so there are times where I will just go hard for reading and times where it'll die down and I'll be interested in something else, and I'm currently in that phase right now. But I still read a decent amount and I found some books that I really loved, so let's just get into it. The first book I read was The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first book in the Inheritance trilogy, not the Inheritance cycle, because that's like Aragorn and things. Aragorn? No, Aragon. Aragorn, I just watched Lord of the Rings. Aragorn is on the brain. This is about a girl from a poor country who is summoned to become the heir to the God King, even though he technically doesn't have either of those titles of God or King, but in reality he kind of is. So it's very heavy on the political intrigue. There are gods living among the people in this palace, and there are so many questions and schemes for power. The gods are basically enslaved and they're trying to get out. There are also two other heirs that are trying to gain power once this God King passes away, so there are a lot of sides, and our main character is just dropped into the middle of it. I think this is N.K. Jemisin's first published work, and a lot of people say it's not as good as the Broken Earth trilogy. I can see that. It's definitely not objectively as good as the Broken Earth trilogy, but I enjoyed it more than the Broken Earth trilogy. That's a personal preference thing. Technically, the writing is weaker in this book, at least. There's a lot of telling rather than showing, and the setting is not as developed as it is in the Broken Earth. The Broken Earth is almost completely about the setting, or a major part of the story at least is the setting, so it makes sense that that one's more developed. In this one, you can definitely see some holes in terms of knowledge of the worlds and depth of the cultures that you are introduced to, so I noticed that the setting was slightly weaker. And I also don't think it's a really good trilogy setup, which is weird, but the way that this ends is kind of just satisfying as a standalone, so it doesn't really give you an idea of where the trilogy is going to go from here, other than, I guess, with like everything that's going to happen in the world, but there's not really a solid continuation that I can see, so I feel like I am very satisfied with how the story ended after just one book. It could be a standalone if you wanted, but I do plan to continue the series anyway, just to see what it's like, and because I enjoyed it so much. But it's not something that's making me like dying to pick up the next book. However, I really loved this book. It was so much fun. All of the gods and their personalities were so entertaining. It's very much like the Greek pantheon and all of the Greek classics, where they're all kind of troublemakers, and the way that they interact is a lot of fun. All of the politicking was very intriguing and kept me engaged throughout the story. I really did want to know what happened next. And the way that you get answers spread throughout this book is just so well done. It keeps you so involved in the story, and I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, just because everyone had told me that Broken Earth is much better than this one, but I personally think this is better. Technically, it's not better. I'm aware of that. But it's better for me because I am just not a post-apocalyptic book reader. I don't really care for that genre in general. And because that's what the Broken Earth trilogy is, I couldn't quite connect to it as much as I wanted to. So while I can see the merits of the Broken Earth trilogy, I definitely just enjoyed myself more reading this book. I know the next book at least follows different characters, which I understand, but I am kind of sad that I won't be seeing these characters again. I really enjoyed them. They were so sweet and so sweet together. Their found family was so adorable, and I really loved it. But I'm very excited to continue the trilogy and see where it goes from here. If you've been putting off this trilogy because of everything you've heard about it, please pick it up. I was so pleasantly surprised. Next, I continued the Earthsea cycle by Ursula K. Guin with the 5th book in the series, Tales from Earthsea, which is a collection of short stories. These are all set throughout the timeline of the series, so you have some prequels and you have some things scattered throughout the other books. And then the last story is a kind of linker between the 4th book and the 6th book in the series. Like with any collection of short stories, some are going to be better than others. I personally enjoyed some more than others. I found some of them were a bit confusing and just not really pleasant to read, The writing is always beautiful. Ursula K. Le Guin's writing is just lyrical and poetic and lovely. It's so nice. So the writing wasn't the problem. Sometimes the story structure is a little bit confusing, especially because I've been reading this series on audiobook and I am not really an audio learner. I don't do as well listening to things. So I tend to listen to audiobooks when I don't really need as much attention to detail, or I don't feel like I need to. Apparently I did need more attention to detail because there are things in here that started to make sense with the rest of the story that I just wasn't really getting. Another part of that could just be the author trying to fill in gaps, because the first book of the series was supposed to be a standalone, and then she went back to it and continued writing in it and tried to make sense of things while her view on humanity basically changed, and tried to figure out how her story works in a way that she wants it. So a lot of these stories are going back and fixing things in the timeline, or telling you what happened in this time period to get to where we are in the series, to kind of make it make sense. She builds a lot more nuance into the story as she writes each subsequent book, so there are tidbits of information in here that are important for the series overall, and I am really enjoying just piecing the world together and piecing the history together. I think it's really fascinating and I'm enjoying it a lot. So I am going to finish the series very soon. There's only one book left, and even though it's not my new favorite series of all time, I still enjoy each book and I'm having fun with it. So I'm very glad that I am almost done with the series and I can add another classic fantasy series into my repertoire. Next, I read The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water by Zen Cho. This is a novella, so it's kind of hard to say what it's about, but it is an Asian fantasy with smugglers and a monastic order. I really enjoyed this world, but I'm just a little bit sad that I got all of the world building information through an exposition info dump. It wasn't the cleanest strategy, but I still enjoyed the information I got. The characters were really fun and sweet. I never fully attached to them, but they were still really entertaining to follow. There's a sort of found family in this little smuggler band, and it was really sweet. The story and plot itself is rather slow moving actually, but it does have flashes of action and magic to keep it really interesting, as well as just going more into these characters, which was really fun. Overall, I enjoyed my time with it, but I just wanted more from it, which makes sense because it's a novella. I would love so much more in this world because it's such an interesting world and I want to know more about it. Not through an exposition dump, hopefully, but I would love to get more stories in this world. So I really liked reading it, but I just wanted it to be a little bit longer so that I could really get sucked into it. And then I read Changer of Days by Alma Alexander. This is the sequel and finale to the Ankara Kurhama series, and it was fine. It was pretty anticlimactic, which is kind of weird in a second book. I feel like the first book was better than this one, honestly. There was a lot of telling rather than showing, which was really annoying because this is the climax of the series. It's the finale. It's where all of the action is, and I'm still being told it passively rather than being engaged in it. So that just kind of got on my nerves. The characters were pretty flat, but I wasn't really expecting that much else from it because the first book, they were also pretty flat. I was still interested in them and interested in what happened to them enough to continue in the series, but all of the things that I was interested in were not really talked about in this. I said in the first book that the pacing is weird because there are time skips and there are parts that are very slow moving, and I felt like they should have been switched. The parts that were time skips should have been like dwelt on, and the parts that were dwelt on should have been skipped. So I kind of had that problem again with this, where it's just like the parts that I want to focus on are not what's being focused on, and it's really frustrating. I still liked it, I think. I mean, it was fine. I didn't have any strong opinions toward it. I didn't hate it enough to DNF it, but I also didn't love it either. It's a very mediocre book and a mediocre series in general. There were some plot things in here that I was just asking, why? Why did we go through all of this just to do this? Yeah, it was weird. I wouldn't really recommend this series. If you've read it, I'd be interested in knowing your thoughts, but if you haven't read it, I don't really think you need to pick it up. There are a lot of much better books out there. Oh, and in case you didn't know, this was a reread for me. So I actually read this book probably in 5th or 6th grade, and I just wanted to reread it and figure out what it's about because I don't remember it, and honestly, that should have been my trigger. I don't remember it at all, probably because it wasn't great. I found a new favorite nonfiction and I am so excited about it. It's How to Be Yourself by Hendriksen, and this is about social anxiety. There's so much information in this. It covers the wide range of ways that social anxiety can manifest and also how you can combat it. There's a lot of really actionable advice in here in order to get over your social anxiety, and it's so informative and also engaging in the way that it tells it. There are stories about this author's clients and their struggles and how they've overcome them, and it's so empowering and inspiring to see. It's really nice to see someone who's going through the same things that you are, getting through it and working through it and becoming less inhibited by things like social anxiety. It's so nice. I definitely need to go back and reread it and tab it up, get a physical copy, because I need to find a way to incorporate a lot of this information into my life. So I think this is a book that I'm definitely going to come back to a lot in the future. It's a fantastic read if you're dealing with social anxiety. I would highly recommend it. I actually started reading this in March, but I had to put it on hold because that's when all of the COVID stuff was happening and I was not in the mood to read nonfiction. Even though I was enjoying this book when I was reading it, my headspace was just not right for it at that time. So it's been paused since March and I finally finished it this month and I'm so glad that I did. And finally, I finished the Gallagher Girl series by Ali Carter. I read 2 short stories and the final book. This is a YA series about a spy school for girls and it was one of my favorites growing up. I've been talking about it a lot recently, so you can see some of my thoughts in my previous videos, but this ending was not quite what I wanted. I read Classified Files, which is a short story. I think it technically comes before the 5th book. I read it slightly out of order, but that's fine. It's a just very short story from the different perspectives of Cammie's friends in this certain situation that they're in at that point, and it was fine. It wasn't really anything super necessary. And I also had a problem with the writing. So the series itself is told from Cammie's perspective, just first person perspective the whole time. And this was the first time that we're seeing from other people's perspective. And it didn't quite work because the tone was just too similar. It sounded exactly like Cammie, even though it wasn't Cammie. So that was kind of weird. It was either just almost exactly the same tone as Cammie, or it was just telling rather than showing. So the writing wasn't great and it didn't really add that much to the story anyway. It's interesting, and if you're already this deep into the series, I don't see why you wouldn't read it. It's really short, but it's not super necessary either. And then the final book in the series, United We Spy, was my least favorite book of the series. It was kind of batshit. The plot went absolutely insane. It was so weird and cheesy and cringy. I think part of it was just because this book expands a lot more in scope, where the first 5 books were still pretty contained to one small area. It started out just in the school and this town, but it got a little bit bigger from there. But this one, it was just worldwide, and it was kind of weird. It felt really off tonally, and I just found that the characters and the writing was more cringy than normal. I haven't had a problem with cringing rereading this series or reading the 5th book for the first time, but this one I was actually cringing, and I think it's just because the plot was so weird. It was so unbelievable and just unrealistic, where technically it's like a spy school. They have advanced technology. It's not really realistic to start with, but it just didn't really match up. It felt really weird, more unrealistic than the first couple books were. So it was not my favorite book in the series, and it's not how I would have wanted the series to end, but I am still glad that I finished the series and I finally know how it ends after all of this time. I still do really love the series. It holds such a special place in my heart. I will just probably throw out the 6th book. Good thing I didn't buy it. I have all of the books that I really liked, and I just don't need to get the 6th book. It's fine. And then after the end of the series, there is another short story. It's called The Gallagher Wedding, and it's very sweet and cute. It is very short again, but it's not in a weird perspective this time, so I don't have any problems with the writing. It is better than the other short story, Classified Files, and it's just really cute. I mean, you can tell it's just about a wedding. It's really sweet. Macy was kind of out of character, but other than that, it was very sweet and a cute little addition. Again, not fully necessary, but if you've gone through the entire series, I don't know why you wouldn't spend a little bit more time with these characters. So that's it for all of the books I read in November. Not quite as much as in recent months, but I still feel like I've talked for as long as I did in those wrap-ups, so I don't know what's happening. But I am still pretty happy with my reading. I've read more this year than I have ever before. I think I'm going to reach 100 books this year, which is insane. So I'm very proud of myself for that, and I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself to read a whole lot more in December. But that's it for now. Let me know what you thought about any of these books, and I will see you later. Bye.